Hi, good day again, grade 12s. We're carrying on with settlement. We're now on rural settlement issues. Now, particularly in South Africa, we have a unique history, and that tells us a little bit about the level of urbanization that we have in some areas. So, if you have a look at it, in 1936 there was an act called the Land Act was passed, and this allocated just over 13% of the land in South Africa to black South Africans, who at the time made up about 77% of the population. These areas were referred to as Bantustans, and later on they were called homelands. The areas were generally very poor as far as agricultural land is concerned, very few resources, water and so on was very scarce there, and they became grossly overpopulated. Also, no infrastructure. And if we look at these areas, you can see them here on the right hand side of the map. These areas are even today some of the areas that are less well developed. Um, you can also see that these homelands were in fact fragmented bits. So if you look at this, the purple here, which is Bophuthatswana, um, these areas you can see it's patches all over the place, even down here into the Free State. How does one rule such an independent state? And just while I'm saying it's an independent state, that was only in South Africa that these areas were recognized as independent states. The rest of the world never recognized these Bantustan or homelands. So what has happened is that a lot of people are leaving rural areas and moving into cities, and it's not just in South Africa. This is a worldwide phenomenon, and the term for that is rural-urban migration. Lots of definitions in this section. So that's rural-urban migration, and it's when people leave the rural areas to go and live in urban centres. What then happens is that the population in the rural areas decreases, and this is called rural depopulation. So the reason for this happening, why are people moving into the cities, has been classified into push and pull factors. This is a nice sort of long question, long type question for the exam. But please take note, push factors are something that's bad or something that's negative. If you think of it, it's something that's pushing you away. Whereas pull factors are what make people want to move into the urban areas. So pull factors are then positives. So let's just have a look at a couple of these. Things like natural disasters, droughts, floods, that has a big impact in rural areas, and people may lose their livelihood like that. Lack of facilities, most definitely, education, shopping, services, all that sort of thing. Medical facilities are not great in the rural areas. Lack of services, water, electricity, lack of employment. There are only so many jobs in the rural areas, and there's not a great variety of jobs. Housing is not great. Lack of recreational facilities. I'm going to say that this is not really something that is going to make people move away, but it's definitely a contributing factor. So there's no entertainment, social interaction is a lot less, and then poverty. In rural areas, we see poverty almost more than we do in urban centres, and a lot of people feel that they've got a better chance of improving their standard of living if they move into an urban centre. So then let's just look at the contrary to this, which are the pull factors. Natural disasters don't have such a big impact in urban areas. There is more access to education, better medical facilities, services are better, access to water and electricity, the transport infrastructure is much better. There are more jobs, and there's a greater variety of jobs in urban areas. There's more housing available. Now this one, there are definitely more recreational facilities, more opportunities for social interaction, and so on. And then the last one is that people really have the idea that they could have a better standard of living in urban areas. Just see down here, I've said have a look at your textbooks. That's Platinum Geography. On page 172, there's a nice table there that sets out these push and pull factors. Finally, the results. What happens what are the consequences of people leaving the rural areas? First up is the resources that are there. They're not being used to develop the country. I'm thinking specifically of farming and that sort of thing. Spending in the smaller service centre decreases because people don't have money, so they're not spending money, and so on. So shops start closing down, and then the knock-on effect of that is schools will close down. There'll be even less services available. We take note here that it's often young men who are the first to migrate into the urban areas. They go looking for work, and they leave behind the women and the elderly to look after the farming side of what they're doing. This does mean that the rural population ages, and there's even less growth in the rural population. Finally, what happens is the cycle of rural decline and decay sets in. There's a diagram here that explains it nicely. We start off with young people leaving for better opportunities in urban areas. So it's difficult to recruit labor. Employers can't find labor. So because employers can't find labor, there's less investment happening in the area. Businesses start closing down. There's less employment, less businesses, so now there's less money. The shops start closing, and there's a decline in provision of services. People see this; they have to live with these consequences, and their quality of life deteriorates, which then again means that they move to the urban areas. So this is what we call the cycle of rural decline. Nice diagram. Also, exam question sort of. Have a look at that. Thank you. Goodbye.